R. Kelly was saying that Jay-Z funded his downfall plus the documentary.
It may sound outrageous, but he felt like Jay-Z wanted to get him for.
R. Kelly isn't just fighting for his life anymore, he's being erased. Most people thought his 30-year sentence closed the book, that the industry had scrubbed its hands clean and moved on, until his legal team filed a motion alleging something far darker. That prison officials conspired with members of the Aryan Brotherhood to silence him before he could expose what he knows about two powerful men who have spent decades dodging accountability. According to the filing, Kelly was deliberately overdosed, hospitalized with life-threatening blood clots, then rushed back into solitary confinement within 72 hours of alerting his lawyers to an active plot against him. The motion cites a declaration from a gang leader, an unexplained transfer to isolation, and medical records documenting a near-fatal reaction to medication his attorneys say was never authorized. The Bureau of Prisons dismissed the claims as a fanciful conspiracy, yet notably stopped short of denying the Aryan Brotherhood's involvement or explaining why a man already convicted for well-known crimes suddenly became a target the moment he began talking about figures who've never faced consequences. And that's the real tension here, not whether R. Kelly can be silenced.
These victims overcame Mr. Kelly's abuse. They deserve to be recognized. Know this, we stand here today because of them. Without them, today would not have been accomplished. Today is their day.
The filing hit the federal docket at 4:37 p.m. Eastern, and by 5 o'clock, multiple sources tied to the legal team were privately confirming that the situation was far more serious than the initial leak suggested. According to the motion, R. Kelly didn't simply suffer an adverse reaction to medication. His attorneys allege he was found unconscious after a deliberate overdose, rushed out for emergency treatment for blood clots in his lungs, and then returned directly to solitary confinement. What's fueling concern is the timing. The incident occurred just 72 hours after his lawyers submitted a declaration claiming correctional officers had coordinated with members of the Aryan Brotherhood to silence him before he could disclose information involving two powerful figures who, they argue, have long operated without consequences. The filing goes beyond claims of negligence, naming a specific gang affiliation, referencing a written statement from an inmate said to have direct knowledge of the plot, and pointing to Kelly's abrupt transfer to isolation as evidence that someone wanted him cut off from outside contact. Behind the scenes, the focus isn't on Kelly's past crimes. Those are already public, but on the names he's allegedly been mentioning in private legal discussions over the last 6 months. Sources close to the case say the Bureau of Prisons' response, which dismissed the allegations as a fanciful conspiracy, arrived unusually fast, giving the impression it was prepared in advance. And that's where the narrative starts to feel familiar. Because, as critics quietly note, the last time Kelly claimed he was being forcibly silenced wasn't in a prison cell, but years earlier, during a 2004 tour stop at Madison Square Garden. An incident that, according to past accounts, ended backstage with security intervention and allegations that—
That's part of the indictment. That's somewhat like a blackmail. He was blackmailing people to be in the freak-offs. So that's federal. That could be federal. That's a federal charge. He can't blackmail people to say, yo, listen here, you did it once and you're gonna do it again. That ain't gonna make it with the government or nobody.
the situation stops making sense when you connect the dots. If this were just a routine inmate dispute or a medical incident, Kelly wouldn't have been moved to solitary immediately after his hospitalization, and no one inside the system would be holding a gang leader's signed declaration unless complicity, or a cover-up, was at play. According to the filing, the sequence is chillingly precise. Kelly exposes an alleged hit plot in legal documents, and within days, he's overdosed, hospitalized for blood clots, and isolated. The timing aligns too neatly with another high-profile event. 2 weeks prior, Sean Combs, better known as Diddy, was sentenced to 50 months for transporting individuals across state lines for what prosecutors called orchestrated intimate encounters, a case tied to multi-day gatherings allegedly involving substances administered without consent and filmed. Sources suggest Kelly wasn't just an observer. He may have been a participant and witness to who else was involved, which explains the intensity of the reaction to his filings. The declaration isn't vague. It includes medical records proving the overdose wasn't accidental, security logs confirming his sudden transfer, and a timeline that mirrors the moment his allegations went public. The Bureau of Prisons' response, calling it absurd, without addressing the gang connection or sudden security concerns, speaks volumes, signaling a system more focused on burying the story than investigating it, and leaving Kelly to throw everything he has over the fence before they can silence him for good.
Still say allegedly, has done things and allegedly participated in a lot of things that the public would not be happy.
But the story is spreading, and the cracks are appearing exactly where the official narrative no longer holds. Take the 2004 Best of Both Worlds tour, once dismissed as a clash of egos between two superstars, now looking more like an early warning. The tour imploded after R. Kelly accused Jay-Z's team of sabotaging his performance, an accusation that ended with Kelly being pepper-sprayed backstage at Madison Square Garden. At the time, it was framed as chaos and insecurity, but in light of Kelly's current prison filings alleging a coordinated effort to silence him, that moment reads less like a tantrum and more like a test run. After the tour collapsed, Kelly filed a $75 million lawsuit that quietly disappeared, and years later, Jay-Z allegedly helped fund the documentary that permanently dismantled what remained of Kelly's public standing. To critics, that wasn't accountability, it was containment. What's being whispered now is that Kelly isn't dangerous because of what he did, but because of what he knows. The lawsuits, the documentary, the sentence, all of it was supposed to close the book. But then Diddy was convicted. Kelly's filings hit the docket days later. Within 72 hours, he was overdosed, hospitalized, and placed in solitary. That isn't coincidence. It's a sequence. And the Bureau of Prisons can dismiss it as conspiracy all they want. But one fact remains hard to ignore. Prison gangs don't get recruited to deal with inconveniences. They get used when someone is perceived as a threat. And right now, the only threat Kelly poses is the possibility that the truth connects dots powerful people don't want connected.
I have been assassinated. I have been buried alive.
The other piece that doesn't fit is the silence from those who should be most alarmed. Jay-Z hasn't said a word. Diddy's team released a bland statement about focusing on his appeal. The Bureau of Prisons dismissed the allegations in under an hour. That's not how institutions respond to baseless claims. It's how they respond when they're trying to control the story before it spirals. And the story here is that R. Kelly isn't just a convicted predator. He's someone who's been inside the machine long enough to know where the bodies are buried. His filings don't just allege a prison hit. They hint at tapes. Private, unreleased, and made at gatherings where the rules were different, with participants who thought they were untouchable. Tapes that don't just document wrongdoing, they give leverage, the kind that keeps empires in line. The panic isn't about Kelly's past. It's about the present, about the fact that he might be the last person left who knows what really happened behind closed doors. If that's true, the overdose wasn't just an attempt to silence him. It was the opening move in a much larger game. And the people who should be sweating aren't in prison. They're the ones who spent decades making sure no one ever connected the dots. Kelly's filings aren't a plea for attention. They're a warning shot. Because if he's telling the truth, then the men who built hip-hop's empire didn't just ignore the monsters in their midst. They protected them. And now, with the last one finally talking, the question isn't whether the truth will come out. It's who will do whatever it takes to keep it buried, and whether the next dose in that federal cell will be the one that finally completes the job.
Respect a response, you know, and again, hindsight, a lot of people don't, you know, people say, well, if I was Jay-Z, I would have done this, but you're not. And I gotta say this, you're not, so you don't know the situation.
The pattern becomes clearer when you look at how the industry has historically handled its predators, not by exposing them, but by managing them. R. Kelly's 30-year sentence wasn't the end of his story. According to his legal filings, it was the moment he became a liability to the same system that had shielded him for decades. Those filings don't just accuse prison officials of misconduct involving white supremacist gangs. They allege a level of coordination that extends far beyond a single facility. Legal observers say the issue isn't Kelly's past crimes, which are already adjudicated, but the names he's reportedly been referencing in private conversations and court documents over the last 6 months. That's what makes the response so aggressive and so immediate. raising the question of why there was such a rush to isolate and discredit him before he could speak publicly. The allegations point toward two powerful figures long associated with scandal yet never fully consumed by it, beginning with Sean Combs, whose recent conviction centered on testimony about private, multi-day gatherings involving alleged coercion, substances, and recordings. Sources familiar with the claims suggest Kelly may have been present in that world, not merely as an observer, but potentially as someone with first-hand knowledge of who else was involved. If true, that would explain why his prison filings triggered such an intense reaction. This, his lawyers argue, isn't about protecting Kelly, it's about protecting the people he could implicate. The timing only fuels suspicion. Combs' conviction, followed weeks later by Kelly's court filings, then an alleged overdose and immediate isolation. Standing alone, each event might be explainable. Taken together, they form a sequence that raises one central question: whether someone with real influence is working to ensure Kelly never gets the chance to connect those dots in public.
Of course, the allegation is that Mr. Combs did the same thing. And so if those facts are actually accurate, it would require an investigation by prosecutors. And if true, right, you could pursue it.
The second dot is Jay-Z, whose name has surfaced in connection with this story going back to the collapse of the Best of Both Worlds tour in 2004. A meltdown that ended with R. Kelly being pepper-sprayed backstage at Madison Square Garden after accusing Jay-Z's team of sabotaging his performance. At the time, it was dismissed as ego clashes and creative differences, but Kelly's recent prison filings alleging a permanent silencing campaign cast that incident in a new light, suggesting it may have been a test run. The pattern continues. After the tour's collapse, Kelly sued for $75 million, a case quietly settled, and years later, Jay-Z reportedly helped fund the surviving R. Kelly documentary, which effectively crippled what remained of his career. The question no one is asking is why someone who had long ignored Kelly's behavior would suddenly involve himself in his public downfall, unless there was something in it for him.
Say, "Oh, you dirty b****." Oh, I was reading. I was like, "You."
Kelly isn't just serving time, he's being systematically silenced. His legal filings allege that prison officials recruited the Aryan Brotherhood to target him after he started revealing what he knows about two men who have spent decades outrunning scandals. A sequence of events that saw him overdosed, hospitalized for blood clots, and returned to solitary within 72 hours of speaking out. The timing lines up with Diddy's recent conviction and a history of incidents implicating Jay-Z, from the Best of Both Worlds tour meltdown to his alleged funding of the documentary that destroyed Kelly's career, suggesting this isn't about past crimes, it's about control. Sources claim Kelly may have been a witness to multi-day private gatherings where substances were administered and filmed, creating leverage over untouchable figures. The filings hint at secret recordings, not used in court but powerful enough to expose a network of protection and complicity. If true, Kelly isn't just a convicted predator. He's the last one who knows the full story, and the men who built hip-hop's empire are doing everything to make sure it stays buried, leaving the question of whether the next move will be fatal hanging over him like a shadow.
And I'm not saying allegedly.
Oh.
I'm saying, Sean Carter, you're a piece of shit. Taking Pimp C wasn't bad enough. You just want to go down there and you want to just remove all of the balls from every real gangster in Houston.
But this story doesn't end with R. Kelly, it ends with the men who built entire careers making sure stories like his never surfaced. Diddy's conviction was only the first domino. Jay-Z's name circulating in federal whispers is the second, and the third is the one no one is ready to say out loud yet. The tapes, the witnesses, and the decades of enforced silence from people who understood the cost of speaking up. The industry didn't just protect stars, it protected secrets, weaponizing bad behavior as leverage, using it to control rivals, secure loyalty, and keep anyone from getting close enough to expose the truth. Kelly's prison filings don't describe a random incident. They outline a system, one that allegedly involves gang affiliations, a deliberate overdose, and rapid isolation the moment he became a liability instead of an asset. The Bureau of Prisons can dismiss it as conspiracy, but the logic doesn't hold. You don't mobilize prison gangs to silence a nuisance, you do it to neutralize a threat. And if Kelly is telling the truth, the threat isn't his past crimes. It's what he knows about the people who benefited from the silence, the recordings that were never entered into evidence, and the names everyone in the industry recognizes but no one will publicly say. This was never about outrage or morality. It was about leverage, and now that leverage may be slipping. Because when the system that protected you for decades starts turning inward, reputation stops mattering and freedom becomes the real currency. The story isn't over. It's just reaching the point where control fractures, and the only question left is what happens when the last man who knows the truth is the one they're trying hardest to silence.